Hey everybody, so over the last few videos we've been working with this string class or str class as a way to manipulate and play with strings. And we've been doing it in a TDD fashion, so we have all of our tests and we're using terminal to sort of run those tests, and then we also have the documentation down here that helps us sort of see what it is we're trying to build. It's basically our requirements document, for lack of a better way of saying it. So, but what I've noticed from watching the videos and also just operating this way for a little while is that it's kind of annoying. The code isn't that easy to read, so I'm trying to make the text bigger, but then you end up in the word wrap situation. You guys can't see any of my column markers, so if I zoom back out, you can see that I have sort of indicators or rulers at 80 columns as well as 120, and that basically none of the code actually hits that 80 column mark. Well, it looks like this one goes over by one, but I'll let that slide. So we've got to do something with our environment to make it easier to develop, as well as to make it easier for everybody watching these to see. Right? Now, from a design perspective, what we're looking at from a hierarchy is this Sublime text window is actually the main window. It's the area that we spend most of our time, right? Because either we're in the string class or we're in our tests, and we're just constantly going back and forth between those, right? The typical flow is I'll look up something in the docs to see how it works and what it's supposed to do. I will come over here and I will write a test. That test will fail. And then I'll come back into the class and I will modify the class in such a way that the test then passes, and double check, and then we move on to the next test or the next requirement for our class. Which means that basically, so if this is the primary window and this is the secondary window, this is the tertiary window. And basically, unless we're doing any type of research, like looking up how PHP solves a problem versus the way that Swift is trying to solve that problem and trying to merge the two, we never look at this window, right? It becomes an add online. And so what would be better is if we could have basically just this full screen of the documentation, because then what I could do is basically increase the font size, which would make it better on screen when you're watching the videos. You can actually read it if you want to. You don't have to, but you could. And same thing with the docs for PHP. We could make that font size bigger, and that way when I'm highlighting something you can actually see what it says. So one way to do this is by having this video or having this window this large and then just hide it, right? And so there are sort of three shortcuts that we can use, or that I use for window management. One is Command W, and what Command W does is it closes a window within an application, and so a window or a tab. And so if I wanted to just close this tab, I could just hit Command W and the tab closes, right? So that's good. And then there's also Command Q, which is probably another one that you're familiar with. And what that does is it closes the application down, and depending on what application you're in, if you launch that application again, it may or may not come back with whatever windows you had open. So, but there's also Command H, and what Command H does is hide. Okay. And that's different than, I think it's Command M. So Command M does minimization, which means that it comes down here into the dock for you, and you can maximize it and that sort of a thing. Command H, on the other hand, just makes it so that the windows don't appear. right? Like you know from looking at the dock that it's launched, right? Because it's got the little dot under it. Safari has the dot underneath it, but beyond that, you have no idea how many windows are open for that because you've hidden them all, right? And then what makes this nice is that you don't have to relaunch the application. You can literally just make Mac OS aware that you want to see that application again. So another way to do this, right, is to do multiple desktops. Now, the easiest way is just to say, maximize Safari, and basically if you come into Mission Control, you can see that you have this desktop and then this desktop. And what that allows me to do is use a three-finger gesture or various keyboard commands to basically just go back to development. Right? Now, right now I'm using QuickTime screen recording to create these videos, and that means that it's going to be able to handle multiple desktops. If I decide to switch to a different type of recording mechanism or something like that, it may not be able to handle that. So I may have to go with just the Command H, right? But the point being is that we have now taken that tertiary window and put it in a place that makes more sense for it, which is we're not going to use it that often, so why is it constantly on the screen? Now the next one is this terminal window, right? And I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different things, right? So one of the things that I could do, for example, is I could move that down here and then minimize this a little bit, right? And then you spend a lot of time. And there are applications that make doing multiple layouts and layout changes easier. But Sublime Text comes with one, and a lot of IDEs do. So if I come into View, Layout to Columns, right, one of the things that I could do is put the tests on one side and then put the class on the other, right? And then we could increase the font size to make it something easier to read, but still maintain that 80 column marker so that I at least know what's there. Now, chances are the tests are always going to be a little bit shorter on the columns, so I can actually move this over, and let's go ahead and just make it a little bit bigger. All right, so I still have the ruler, the text is a little bit larger, and this is also a little bit bigger as well, or a little bit wider. So anyway, the problem that I have with this is that basically terminal, at least when we're doing just unit tests and PHP unit, rarely goes way out here. It's, at least in a way that doesn't make sense, right? So like we've never, even in the errors, this is, I think, one of the closest that we get, and it basically just puts a PHP error onto one line by having all that screen real estate. So it would be nice if we could have a bash terminal inside of Sublime Text. And so it just so happens that we can. If I do Command-Shift-P, it brings up a bunch of commands. And part of what Sublime Text is nice for is that you can get packages. Right? And so if I type in bash, you can see that I have this thing called terminal view, which basically can open up a bash terminal. And so I already have that installed, and there we go. So it's open, and it's already inside of the project directory. So if I type in vendor, then PHP unit, and hit enter, I get what we're looking for, right? So at that point, when it comes to the real terminal window, I can just hit Command Q and close it out. Now I will say one of the drawbacks to this terminal window is that I can't scroll up for whatever reason, right? So if we run tests over, and over again right? So stuff is scrolling off the screen. If I try to scroll up, I can't, right? So that is a limitation of either Sublime Text or the package itself. I'm not really sure, but the point is that it's there. Now, it's still some clicking, right? So if we again try to go through the workflow that we talked about, we're going to come over here, we're going to look at this, we're going to talk about the requirement, we're going to come back to our code, we're going to write a test that is going to fail or should fail. Then we're going to hit the tab and we're going to hit PHP unit and have it run again to make sure that it fails. This is the nicest part. So the main window becomes this left window, and I don't have to click a tab or anything like that. I just need to get the cursor in there. And so that's nice, but I'm still having to flip between the terminal and the main test. Because if you've watched the other videos, you've probably seen a couple of times where I've looked back at the test and I had to actually correct something in the test, right? Where I had, say, instantiated an empty string when I really wanted to do one from string. So it would be nice if we could lay this out in a different way, and there are different options, but you are limited in Sublime Text of the complexity, at least by default, that you can build. The closest to what we want, where we have basically the tests and the terminal on that right column, or together in some way, and then the left column with the being the main window, to the best of my knowledge, is this foregrid. Right? And so basically we can just grab this down here, and now things are a little bit better. Now if something happens with PHP unit and I have to scroll up, I'm basically going to need to bring the height of it up and then run the test again. But in most cases this should be fine. Having said that, it chops off this bottom portion of code. So it'd be a lot nicer if we could actually just have two separate windows over here and then one full window over here. And that's where we get back into Sublime Text and packages. So if I hit Command-Shift-P, I think, and type in install, you can see where it says package control. Actually, let me move this up here. Yeah. So install package, and if I hit enter, what it's going to do is connect to an API, the Sublime Text Package API, and give me a list of packages that I can go to. And there's one called More Layouts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit More Layouts, and there is a website that you can go to and see what is available there. And down in the left column, there's usually, or down in the left area of the window pane, it'll say installing package, package installed, and that sort of a deal. And so if we come into view layout, you can see that we have a lot more layouts, right? 3-pane top, 3-pane right, so on and so forth. And basically, like, just to give you an idea, 3-pane top is there's a pane that's going to be on the left, a pane that's going to be on the right, and then the main area in general taking up the most space is going to be that bottom window. That's not the one that we're really going for. The one that we're going for is 3-pane right. Right? And so now if we do the sort of the workflow, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here, see whatever the requirement is, write the test, come down here, hit up and hit enter, and it's going to run the tests. And then we have a really nice large place to do our coding. I'm going to go ahead and make that smaller this way, because again, none of this, the tests really take up that much space. There are a couple that overlap or have to word wrap, but we're doing pretty okay. So if I make sure that that bar stays visible, right? So now our text is a little bit bigger and hopefully easier to read on the video. All right, so what are we wanting to do? So we just finished suffix, we're into split. And so if we look at the signature for this, we're going to split on a character. We're going to max splits seems a little weird. And then omitting empty subsequences. So basically if we get into a situation where a subsequence is an empty string, don't return that one. So let's delve into this just a little bit because I want to see what max splits means. So the maximum number of times to split the collection, or one less than the number of subsequences to return. So if max splits plus 1 subsequences are returned, the last one is a suffix of the original collection containing the remaining elements. Huh. Yeah, okay. So yeah, let's see if we can get that done in the next 10 or 15 minutes. All right, so basically what we want to do is we want to say public function test can split on character. I may not do the max counts yet, but or max splits, but for right now, that's what we're going to do. And I think we have in one of our tests a bunch of globes with commas. So there's that. And so what we're actually expecting is an array. Okay, so I'm going to make another one of these, and what we're expecting really is that, right? And so we should be able to do result equals string from string right? And then we're going to do split, and this is very much like explode from PHP, and that's probably what we're going to do. And so separator character, if we can, is the comma. And again, we're going to, not do anything with max splits or anything like that. So this assert equals expected result. Come down here, up, oh, unexpected period. Oh, so one error, and I'm going to move this up just because we get that error a lot, and I need to be able to see it. So split doesn't exist. That was what I was expecting anyway. So remove last, right? And so we've been grouping anything that brings back a string and not an instance, or trying to. And those are just the checks. Starts with is same as. Right, so this is where I think I want to do that. So public function. I've been trying to use more of the shortcuts available as we progress. So if you type in fun, it's going to be a public function, and if I hit tab, I can just come over to the next one, which of course is split. If I hit tab again, it puts me inside of the argument list. So That's just a nice way to do things. So string separator, and this is going to return an array, and let's see if this works. Return explode delimiter is separator. Do we want to use the term delimiter? No, I like separator better. So separator, and then this string. See if that works. And that works. So now the question that I would have is, because again we've been dealing with this multi-byte problem, so can I do the opposite, right? Can I use that globe as the separator and return an array of just commas? Oh, right. Character. No. Now see, it says that the expected was an array of 1. An array with 1 column. Is that going to be a single versus double quote problem? So PHP differentiates between sometimes single and double quoted strings. And so basically this comma is looked at differently than just a comma in single quotes. So no, let's do var dump. And see, this is where scrolling up would be helpful. So let's do this. Launch terminal. I'm going to go into desktop, string. Right, so that one's correct, see? And then, so this one, this is the actual, okay. So, but you can see we have some empty ones, and we don't have, do we have the proper number of commas? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the proper number of commas is there. And this is probably why we have this omit empty subsequences. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Bool omit empty equals true by default. So build empty array for each char, each possible in array if not empty. And this sort of way of writing bangs or reverse is something that I picked up from a developer that I knew back in the day. And when we were having a discussion about coding style and things like that, and, the reason that he liked it was that it gave more emphasis to the fact that something is different. And I think I've seen in the Laravel code, they will do space bang space. Just to make it really blatant, like this is doing something different. So so basically what we're going to do is we're just going to build that array, and in theory choose the terminal this time. So for each array as possible. My bad. Wrong language. Huh. I wonder if this is the UTF, the multi-byte problem. So let's do this. Z, copy, G, paste, G, paste. Okay. Okay, no, it is not. So what am I doing wrong here? Oh, I'm var dumping array, not build. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5, so that's a problem. Okay, let's try that. All right, so that works. That also works. Okay, so let's stop doing the var dump. And is that actually something? Do I actually need to check for that right now? Yes. Okay. Right, because that's the expectation. If I explode, or at least for me, that's the default expectation. That's the rational default, right? If I explode on the globe, then as the separator, basically, I don't want empty strings. And of course, I can say, omit empty false, and get back what I'm expecting. So, in fact, let's go ahead and do that just to finish this off. So, task can split on character 3. So, what we'd expect this time is that, and so I'm going to say split false. So don't omit. Since I'm not actually running the check, this always gets run. So what we're going to do is if omit empty, return array. And there we go. All right, cool. So so that worked out, and I think we have a little bit nicer of an environment. I'm not sure if we're going to make this, and actually, next video we'll probably come back in and talk about the max splits and everything like that. But I'm hoping that this setup works out a little bit better, and we'll find out. All right, as always, thanks for making the time. Appreciate it.